How's it going? Nice to see you again from a beautiful morning here on the island. Welcome back, as always, for another beach talk. Now, I've talked often about my preference for imperfect action trumps perfect inaction every time. Not just a personal journey I'm on, but I'm surrounded by great CEOs, business owners, investors who also believe this, or push themselves to, or remind themselves that imperfect action is where you're aiming for. What's imperfect for you, by the way, could be perfect for someone else, so no one's disappointed. And on a personal point of view, this applies to some practical things. If you take, for example, forecasting, I always try and push that we want to get a 90% view and 10% of the time. The rest of it is not necessarily needed. We've got a credible forecast at 10% of the time. We've got the right balance. If we can't understand our economic model to be able to get 90% view and 10% of the time, well, something's not right. And we can deal with that, and that's okay. And from a personal point of view, when I started in the corporate space, it was the complete opposite. We were working on monster models. They were, obviously, the numbers were a lot bigger. This particular peak funding was 500 million. The models were more complicated, the process was more complicated, and I guess I was just earlier in my career to do something about it. But I had a moment when we were presenting a particular budget for approval where I was like, yeah, I need to be more agile in how I work. And it spooked the two people I worked with, but I had basically a mistake of 28 million on a slide that no one spotted, and we got away with it. And I'm not saying you should do this, by the way, but we had a 10-year plan, needed 500 million. We were so focused on our budget to get that approved the next 12 months. Just before the presentation, I was told we're going to have to represent our 10-year view, and I hadn't actually been going past the 12 months. So I naturally said, well, I can't do that. I can't do it in an hour. And the project lead was saying, well, we're going to have to present something, so what are we going to do? And I said, leave it to me. So I basically just bolted a 12-month budget into our 5-year or 10-year plan. And I guess I just took a risk that because I was controlling the slides, that no one else would spot a £28 million difference between two numbers in our cash flow. And they didn't. Now, in reality, was it a mistake? Well, it was a mistake on the slide. If we'd more time, we would have just rephased our assumptions, income, OPEX. The whole model would have been pushed back. We would have done what we needed to stay within our 500 million limit. I say limit, what we previously advised was our peak funding. So it kind of just goes to show you, when we came out of the meeting, the CEO and the exec that we presented to had approved it. Let's go ahead. My two colleagues were looking at me saying, I thought you said there was a mistake on the slide. And I was like, yeah, that number and that number don't add up. And they looked at the slide and said, they don't. By 28 million. And I was like, yeah, in an hour I couldn't have redone this model. So that was the best I could have done. And they had mixed emotions from thinking, oh my goodness, what if they'd have spotted it? And I said, well, in a way, I knew no one was going to add up those two numbers. They were just going to listen and process what we presented. So it kind of goes to show you. Now, I wouldn't necessarily recommend you take that approach, but you can still get a 90% view and 10% of the time you're forecasting. The imperfect action also, when it comes to running your business, you can see the same principle. Anyway, as always, thanks for listening. I'll see you on the next video. Cheers for now.